I'm ready whenever you're ready.
Do we cure coronavirus yet?
We have not cured coronavirus yet.
Yeah, we should really do that.
We really should.
Boulevard Realty, here we go. All right, we are live on Facebook.
Okay, and live on Zoom?
Yes, we are.
Excellent. Anybody there, Aaron?
Let's see. We have folks starting to arrive. We're up to 38. Say good morning to 38 of your closest friends.
Good morning, 38 of my closest friends, and hope you become 138 or 538. Welcome to Tuesday, April, where are we today? 21st. Remember, every day's the same. It's Groundhog's Day all over again. Welcome, and I'm glad that you're here again today for what is just basically our informal chat on a weekly basis about the state of the market and where we're at here in Houston, Texas. So I want to thank you for listening live, and for those of you that are going to listen later, we're happy to share this information. Remember, foremost on our mind is your health and your safety, and the health and safety of our agents and our staff and our homeowners, both buyers and sellers, and our friends and neighbors, relatives, and all Americans. We mustn't forget that we knew this was going to take a while, and we're still really about in the middle of this pandemic, of this phase of the pandemic. And I know we all want to get back to work and get on with something normal. And I'm afraid the sheer reality of it is that it's just not going to be like it was anytime soon. But we are learning how to adjust accordingly. And we're able to conduct business, and many of you have lives that are continuing to go on. Those of you that have been on pause and hold in your career and income and work, we're certainly sympathetic and understanding and here to do all that we can to help there. I know really today we want to talk about what is the headline of the week, and it's oil and its impact, and the fear and the concerns and the reality of where we're at. It was in the news all day yesterday. It'll certainly be in the news all day today. When you sell oil at a negative number, it's going to certainly impact the economy. And I'm not going to try and be an expert. Many of you are in oil or economics and are much smarter than I am. But I do have a lot of friends, and I have friends that are able to talk about this on a very more succinct basis. But I'm going to try and summarize the best I can. They sell oil in the futures. It's a futures market. You're betting on oil. You don't buy oil today and get it today. You get it in the future. And we have known for a very long time that there is an oversupply. There was an oversupply before the pandemic. We knew that oil was somewhat in trouble. And when you close the world and national economy down and you don't slow down the production, you knew it was just going to exacerbate. It was going to continue to get worse. And they're pumping more oil than we're using, and we've run out of space for this oil. They haven't adjusted their supply chain as other industries have had to. We have seen for weeks now how the farmers are plowing over their fields because there's not enough consumers to eat what it is that they produced. We see every day in the news the milk being poured down the drain because there are no elementary schools open. That's the only people that really drink all this milk. Remember, you take out the elementary kids drinking milk who are now probably drinking soda pop at home, you have a oversupply of milk with nothing to do with it but pour it down the drain. Oil isn't something that we can just pour down the drain. Remember, it's an environmental concern, and they have been hesitant to slow down the amount of supply chain when the demand is low. No airlines, no conversion to gasoline, people aren't driving. So you produce 30 million more barrels a day than you can consume. At some point, you have no place to put it. So what happened yesterday, the people who had futures in May didn't want the oil. They don't need it. They don't want it. They don't have any place to put it. They don't have any place to store it. There's no need. And so it got to be a negative. They paid people $37 a barrel or some number thereabouts not to take the supply, not to take the commodity. But if you looked at it, it's a weird phenomenon, it had never really happened before. It certainly makes for a very good headline, and it certainly does create fear and panic. But the futures, those futures were for May that expired yesterday. The futures for June were still at $20 a barrel, which is significantly different than -40. So the futures for June are at $26 a barrel. The futures for December are at $30 to $32 a barrel. Even yesterday at the end of the day. Now they're volatile and they could be up or down a little today. And so I don't want to get caught into some quandary, because you could Google right this second and see if I'm off by a few dollars. But the reality of it is, for oil, we're at a peak of supply and the absolute low of demand. And most people assume that we're going to get out of this situation at some point. You're going to open back up China and Europe and Houston and South Dakota, and you're going to fly again for work or travel, or because it's cheaper than it's ever been before, and the demand will increase. It isn't going to keep up with the supply. It isn't going to keep up with the supply for 2020. There's just no reality that we're going to get back to anywhere near the consumption. So the supply is going to have to continue to decline. And of course, there's going to be lost jobs. I don't want to be insensitive to that at all, but it's clearly just a supply and demand, and that's really what's going to impact us here in Houston, and of course across the nation. And of course, for every downturn, there's some opportunity. Gas is cheaper. People probably, Fady and I, instead of going to Italy for vacation, are probably going to get to drive to Crystal Bridges in Little Rock, Arkansas to go see the Walton family fortune in art. You know, we'll modify our behavior. We'll drive to Marfa using cheap gas in order to stay someplace safe and natural and more localized than flying someplace lower. So you're going to see some turnaround, and I just don't want people to panic, because that's not, it's just not the time to panic. There are many positive things happening. So supply and demand is really the topic of the day. I don't know if, I mean, I'm a geek for some of these sort of things, but I've been tracking all of the virus and its impact. And if you haven't done this, you know, I would encourage you to do so. But it's easy to go to Ready Harris. I believe that we can do this technical. You can pop to Ready Harris, which is on this screen. Aaron, did that work or not?
Not yet. You'll want to hit the green share screen.
Okay,
Then
I got to hit that again. Okay, and hit share. Okay,
here we go.
So if you go to Ready Harris, which is an easy website, and you click on this button right here, it will take you to some report. And on that report, I'm having to move my little thing around. Let me just move you over a bit. You can see what's happening. And you can tell by the city of Houston, the number of case counts, by the county, by the region. You can mix them together in almost every scenario. Now, you will see that the peak is probably behind us and that the numbers have been declining. This is the number of cases of COVID-19. That's both, here's the county peak declining, and here's the city peak declining. And you are declining at a time here, we were testing 250 to 500 people a day, and here we're testing 2,500 people a day. So you're testing more people and getting fewer cases. I believe these numbers are totally misrepresented. And like I say, you're not testing enough people. And the reality is, if you started testing 200,000 people, the number of cases would probably go up. So I've never really paid too much attention to that. I paid attention to this, which are really the hospital statistics. If you click here, you can see what's going on at any moment with regards to the specific cases going on in the deal. So I look at general bed usage. You can click here and you can go to Harris County. So you can click general bed usage and only go to Harris County here. if I'm smart enough to do it. And this is showing you what's happening on a daily basis. I think this is pretty fascinating. So here's yesterday. We have the ability, we have on a normal basis, 20,000 beds. You see the middle green line right there. And we're using 14,295 beds. And if we had a surge, we could go up to 24,000 beds, which is the capacity for people who are sick. The reality of it is we're not increasing any of these numbers. We've actually decreased the number of people in a hospital in 30 days, into the virus. We're not increasing the number of people in a bed. And likewise, if you go to let's look at just the intensive care units. We've maintained fairly consistent around the 1,653, 1,651, 1,630, yesterday 1,659, where we have the capacity of around 1,953 beds in the city of Houston or the county. And if we needed to, on surge, could get up to 2,448. We have never come close to meeting this capacity at the local level. We're not New York, we're not Chicago, we're not Italy, but we have had ample capacity, and a month into the virus, we appear to be relatively stable. They have wanted this number to plateau and stay this way or decline for 14 days in order to reboot the local economy. And these are the numbers that they're watching. If you look at ventilators, same thing. You can go look at any county in the state of Texas. If you're more concerned about Fort Bend County or Montgomery County, just click down to the county and you can see what happens. But here you can see the same thing. Here's the number of adults. We have 511 people on a ventilator, which appears to be about the same number, maybe down from a peak of 570. You have an availability of another 694 ventilators. You can see this blue number. We have had excess capacity in 600 and 700 adult ventilators for the entire time that we've really been at this. They break it down to pediatrics, so you could see up above here the number of pediatric ventilators in use, 139. You have 257 available for a total of 396. We're not increasing by any means. Now, every one of these people this is not just a number, this is a people. This can be your brother or your mother or your grandmother. And so I don't want to be insensitive for anyone that's on the ventilators, but we have reached a certain plateau. The social distancing has been working. The measures that we put into play have been working, and we need to continue to see these numbers really need to decline. And this is a more accurate number than really the testing, because the testing, like say, they report late. They're, sometimes you don't get the results for 5 to 7 days. You're significantly increasing the number of tests every day, but it's not near enough. Like everyone believes everyone should be able to be tested. I know one of my agents was sitting on hold at the city number earlier today for 40 minutes. I think if you're patient, you can get through, but the city and the county and the nation have been working to increase testing and must continue to increase testing. But these are really the numbers. If you follow New York City, the number, of course, you don't want to just track the number of deaths. You want to track the number of people going into the hospital is declining every day, and the number of the days that they're staying is declining for some degree, because the most sick go the quickest or whatever. But we're getting better ability to track these numbers. So just if you really want to know when will the local economy, here's the same scenario on oil. It's supply and demand. The reason we're in a shelter in place, the reason that we have these restrictions is because they feared without them, your demand for hospital beds, ICU beds, or the ventilators would exceed the capacity. And so they were able to adjust accordingly and prepare. This doesn't even count the numbers of beds that were temporarily set up at NRG Stadium, and hopefully, and like I say, not into the political statements, better to err on the side of caution and have too many beds than not enough beds. You wouldn't want mass chaos of people lining up over there at a convention center parking lot. But I mean, I track this every day. Sometimes I come here 3 and 4 times a day to see what's going on. And like I said, don't want to be insensitive, but I mean, I do think that we are making significant progress in those areas. And we're able to, and that's really going to determine when we get back to any sort of normalcy with regards to us here locally in city of Houston, Harris County. Everyone wants to get back to work. No one wants to be responsible for someone getting sick or dying. And so we're going to have to ease our way into it and open back up a little bit at a time. And that's what I believe that you're going to see is a continued small reduction. Yes, the number of cases is going to spike a little bit more, hopefully not too much. If they do, then you'll have to put in some more restrictions, which causes basically an emotional anxiety. If people think we're going backwards, they're not going to want to, it's going to throw people into a depression that, I mean, I think we need to be careful of. It's easier to ease into this situation and hope that we can become, responsible as we integrate ourselves more and more and try and reopen and address especially these small businesses, the hair salons, the nail salons, the massage therapists, the small retailers, that have been the restaurant industry, 300,000 direct employees, and I'm assuming another 1 million indirect sort of impact by restaurants not being open, from the supply, to the paper goods guy, to the delivery person. I mean, everyone understands the importance, but you can't have the surge at the expense of lives. I mean, it just doesn't seem to make any sense to do that. So continue to go to Ready Harris and track those sort of things. That's what I believe is certainly the supply and demand of the epidemic will determine the normalcy of how we get back to play. And I believe that we soon are going to say we've reached the peak and we're on a steady decline. It's a long time from the 21st to the 30th. That's, 9 more days of information. And if those numbers are cut in half, if you can significantly reduce those numbers, then I think you're going to see an easing of the restrictions come April 30th. If you're not, then I think the reality of it is you probably wouldn't be responsible for our leaders to throw us back into something and create a panic at the medical center, or just the not be able to deal with the capacity of dealing with the number of people who might potentially be impacted if you have larger gatherings. But I mean, I'm a realist. I think the leaders are realistic. If you can go to HEB and there's 500 people in there in the produce section, no one's 6 feet apart. They basically have a mask, but I mean, they're touching a lime and then someone else is coming up and touching the lime, and we're able to do that because that's necessary. I think you're going to see, I was at Target over the weekend, and I like bookstores. There's no bookstores open. At least at Target, there are 50 books for me to go and look at. If there are 20 of us at the Target book section, then we ought to be able to allow 20 people at Brazos Bookstore or River Oaks Bookstore or Barnes and Nobles or something. So, I mean, I think the reality of it is we need to find some way to get back to the next phase, which is a partial reopening of many of the economic factors within our region. For housing, which is what you're really here, and not to hear me lecture about oil and gas or when we get back open, we've been in a steady phase of real estate. It hasn't been an extreme one way or the other. It's much of this week is a reflection of the previous week. Aaron, how do I get to these slides again? You're going to do it? I'm just going to let Aaron do some slides for just a second, which was a brief recap of where I started, which is number of COVID cases. I'm just going to flip through this just quickly. We'll send this stuff to you. The number of cases, like I said, go to Ready Harris if you really want to know what's going on. If you want to test, of course, now everyone currently can be tested, especially in the city. You call this number, you get an ID code. I've had a number of friends and a number of employees. It does, you know, of course, there's usually a surge in the morning calling or whatever. So sometimes you might be better off calling in the afternoon for the next day than you are calling right at 9 a.m. You're going to wait longer. And they're going to continue to expand this. So, and I think you'll see some form of antibody testing soon, whether it's accurate or not. I'm not a medical profession to say. But here's how you do that. But let's get on to basic numbers. Of course, people, the longer they linger, the more bored they get at home. So these are a recap of just Boulevard Realty, the number of people who are online who go to search for homes. And this is, to the right is 2019. So in this particular week of 2019, we had 29,000 hits to our real estate listings on the World Wide Web. They could be anything. They rank them based on volume. So you could see HAR.com at 63% there to the top right is the largest one typically for us. And then Zillow is next, and truly you get to Realtor.com and you get to other, sites, but most people are looking in these deals. And you see 29,614. The left-hand slide is showing you this week basically this year, and we're only down, it's down 22,215, but it's significantly better than you might think. So let's say we're off here 33% of views. That's really not too bad in the middle of a pandemic, and it's still 22,000 hits on particular homes of people who are certainly looking at a house for any particular reason. Many of them could just be getting remodeling ideas. I'm realistic about it, but I'm just comparing year to year. It's not off 100% or 75% or even 50%. It's off about 33%. Next slide, Aaron. So what we track over here is basically the inner city markets. And I think it's important. You need to go track your particular market. If you're in Pearland and you have a $300,000 house, or you're in Cinco Ranch and you have a $500,000 house, or you're in the Woodlands, you need a real estate agent who can get you this information and who can evaluate its effectiveness. We're tracking, basically the Heights area, 45 to 610 to I-10 to Shepherd, and we're tracking what's going on there. And so we look at the number of listings, supply and demand. The housing industry already had a shortfall. It's what created the biggest boom ever in 2019. It's because you didn't have enough supply. You had more buyers than you had houses. Thus you have bidding wars for people who have lost out the previous 6 times. And so what you're seeing is the reality is that the inventory of houses for sale today is down pretty good, which I think keeps it stable. If we had 2 years of supply, the housing price would start to plummet. We need a balance in the marketplace. So this reduction of inventory is good for stable prices. It's still, I want to be clear, you're in the middle of an economic, social, and psychological crisis. And so it's certainly a buyer's market and not a seller's market, but we're maintaining a good balance, I believe, into the marketplace in all of these areas. Area 9 being Heights, Area 16 being Montrose, Area 17 being Westview, Area 23 being Memorial. We take out, these are single family houses, generally above 500,000 or some number, maybe it's 400,000, so that we don't skew the numbers one way or the other. But the short answer is that the inventory stays in check. I don't know what else you have there, Aaron, but we can get kicked back to me. We'll be done with that. So I continue to look. So we run every day these little reports, and I look at now, Area 9, how are we doing? And so this is just last week. The number of inventory actually went down. You had, of the ones we've been tracking, it's 32, but we had one in the let's see, we had 32 houses get into an option period this last week. We had one go to pending, continue to show. We had 19 that moved out of option pending over into pending. And we had 53 houses that closed, and the average list price to sales price was 97.3%. So there hasn't been a huge drop. And there again, that's a price point, that's the entire price range for area 9. So pretty good stability. Still plenty of people getting under contract. Housing people that want a house are not looking for a reason just to pull out. They haven't pulled out because of the economy or because of their job. I mean, they, for the most part, have stayed in. It's not to say that someone's not nervous and someone might not want to reconsider their decision. It's what an option period is for, by all means. But people are getting under contract in the Heights. They're getting out of their option period, and they're continuing to close at about the same rate they were last week and the week before. So, I mean, the number of showings is down, the number of sales is down, but it's proportionate to the number of listings onto the marketplace, which keeps things relatively balanced. As I mentioned last time, you have a normal house in good shape on a good location, there are buyers for those homes. I mean, there's just no doubt about it. Whether that's a 2-2 for 500,000 or a 3-2 for 750,000 or a 4-bedroom, 3.5 bath zone to Travis Elementary, they're still selling those homes just fine. I do think people are more particular than ever, and they have plenty of choices. And, you know, I've said it time and time again, it was this way in 2019. No one's going to buy a house today that's a project. I mean, the number of people willing to do a project, willing to try and meet contractors and, you know, install countertops and backsplash is low. It's easier if you're in that market to remove your house from the marketplace, do the work while there's not much else going on, and put it back on at a different time frame. And if your house has been on the market for an extended period of time, look, my advice would be take it off. I mean, if we don't need to stay on forever and ever. Withdraw a home, wait another month or so, see how the economy is doing. Maybe just have an off MLS, which is legal to do, and your agent can explain to you why you might want to be off MLS and you have options. It's not the only option. I'm not a big fan of off MLS. I'm actually the opposite of that. But in unique times, then I think there's an opportunity to maybe be off MLS. I'm selling a very expensive house in the Heights that was not on the multiple listing service. They were willing to sell, and I just managed to visit with an agent who saw one of my other listings and route them over there, and the deal seems to be doing just fine. So it is possible to sell a house on the MLS. I do think you need the maximum amount of exposure. That's why I'm somewhat of a proponent in these odd times. Put the house on the market for a month or two, take it off for a month, maybe put it back on. It's a commodity. You want as many people as possible to see it, but you don't necessarily have to stay on the market forever. At some point, if your bananas are sitting there and nobody's taking the bananas, maybe you should take your banana, make banana pudding out of it. Maybe you'd have a better chance of selling banana pudding or banana bread than you would bananas. So, I mean, at some point, you've got to do something like that with your housing stock, or insanity is doing the exact same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So at some point, you got to do something different. And so I'm a fairly big proponent in these weird times of trying something, take it off. Try something, take it off, paint the front door, re-landscape. This is an absolute golden opportunity to take this time to go get your house ready for the next buying season. I believe instead of the typical spring buying season, it's going to get pushed. Things are going to get pushed over. I have people that are relocating. They can't get to where they're relocating. I have people in high rises. They don't allow the moving companies in. So if, you know, when they do allow the moving companies in, then all these people are going to have their trucks lined up to get out of that into their next location. If you're going to London and you can't get to London today, at some point you're going to go to London. I just don't know if that's going to be May or June or July. So I believe wholeheartedly that there's going to be some pent up demand for a number of people. We all get these articles now every day. And the number of people that they were interviewing London real estate agents, and they're all, and they've been non-essentials. They haven't done any work whatsoever. And they're talking about the pending baby boom, the pending divorce rate, the pending people who have been quarantined in their home who are going to want to find a new home because they didn't like the home they were in for an extended period of time. And so they're talking about this pent-up demand of people who can't wait to get out and get into some different housing stock. For everyone, I mean, it's going to modify. I think, as I mentioned before, and will continue, and what I think we're going to see is that people will move. They will move to something different than what they have. Many people will move to a rental unit. They will sell their house, and instead of buying a house, they will rent. Instead of being in the rental market, they decide they don't want to be in one of those Camden apartments, and they're going to want to rent a single family house where at least the dog can get out and they can sit on the porch and feel a little healthier. So, there'll just be some modifications. People will most likely buy more conservative houses. Instead of pushing the market and buying a $1.5 million house, maybe you're going to buy the $995,000 house. Instead of buying the $1 million house, you might buy the $750,000 house. Instead of buying in the Heights, you might buy in Timber Grove or in Oak Forest, or instead of Oak Forest, you might go to Spring Branch. I mean, but there still is going to be enough movement. There's not going to be a mass exodus of people from Houston, Texas. I think many people will get to find a new career, and some of them may not still be in oil and gas. They may be in some other renewable energy or some other industry altogether. I think it's going to modify, and I think people were perceiving that going to happen at some point anyway. So I think you'll just modify. The Real Estate Association, I noticed yesterday, we have about 38,000 members, and 6,000 of them haven't paid their dues for this quarter, which is fairly indicative. I mean, and the relative is almost every quarter about 6,000 people don't pay, and we usually cut them off and they go and pay. I imagine we will lose a fair number of real estate agents that we're trying to do it part-time. We're finding it more and more difficult. We're probably not going to be in any position to weather this storm. So the number of real estate agents will probably be reduced. It's just the sheer reality of it. It is going to take longer to sell a house. You are going to have to be more creative than ever. You're going to have to be more confident than ever. You're going to have to be more resourceful than ever, more informative than ever. And some people just aren't going to make it. And that's, supply and demand, again, at the workforce. Those that are the best, those that are the most resourceful, those that get to work early and stay longer and work harder and work smarter are going to do better than the others that probably could sell a house when times are booming. So I think you just need to hang in there. Visit with your trusted advisor. Make sure you understand your hyper-local market. What is your specific market that you're really focused on? If you're a buyer, I don't know how to make it any clearer. This is a great time to go buy a house because you are not competing with as many people. Mortgage rates are as low as they're probably going to be, and you have an opportunity to get a little bit better on the price than you would have normally, and of course for the seller to be a little more negotiable with repairs than ever before. I truly believe that. I do not personally believe we're going to see massive drops of prices of houses. I would never ever want to sell someone a house that's $500,000 that I think is going to be worth $450 or $400 in a year or two. No real estate agent wants to do that. There is no amount of money that you can be paid that would make up for the fact that there was such a steep decline. So you know your situation. If you feel your career is in jeopardy, or you feel like your financial situation is going to be put at risk, please do not buy a house. You should not be buying a house. You need to buy a house if you can afford a house, and if you need a house, and if you want a house, and you feel like this is a good time and place for you to go buy a house. And for some people, this isn't the right time for them to buy. For others, it is. And they might not want to be in that same bidding war that they would have been in otherwise. And they have, well, it's limited supply. There's limited competition at the exact same time. The amount of inventory will increase when this is over, so you're going to have more choices, but you'll also have more buyers. And I think you're going to have different sort of buyers that you're going to have to compete with. When this has happened before, the recessionary times, I assume that you all know, last time my basic client after the recession was my old client's parents, someone that moved back into the city, into a smaller home from their home in Memorial or Kingwood or the back of Cinco Ranch. And they paid more for a Heights style, comfortable, quaint, new construction with hardwood floors and a Viking range. They got a better house and a better location for more money than they had in their 4,500 square foot house on 20,000 square foot in Memorial that was built in 1972. So I believe those buyers are going to come back into the marketplace again, and they're going to choose quality over quantity in many ways. So I'm confident that we're going to hold firm. There are going to be some soft spots. I think those areas that are most energy related, the energy corridor out I-10 and way out there is probably going to be softer than it's been, because I believe there's going to be fewer of those jobs. And so where there is new construction, the new builds are going to be very competitive in order to sell their houses. They make it up with volume. Assuming the Woodlands is going to be somewhat softer, just because ExxonMobil's not going to be hiring 10,000 new employees anytime soon, and the residual of them paring back will impact a number of other businesses up in the Woodlands. But maybe we'll offset that with wind or solar or some other sort of type of industry, electric cars or electric vehicles. So I think that it's cautious, balanced optimism. We're seeing at least some leveling out in the mortgage industry that's been very volatile, and so there still are loans out there. And so I just think hold the course. We're in this for another week or two before there's going to be massive changes. Then we're going to phase back into it, take time to go for a walk. My daughter and I go for a walk every afternoon at 3 o'clock. It's been great spending time with her doing that. Find something that you can enjoy for a little bit during this particular time, because it too shall pass. And we'll be in a different era. I've been reading a bunch of different books. So I'm reading this lovely Shut Up and Listen book by famed Houstonian Tillman Fertitta. And it really is a good book. I'm going to post about it on my Facebook page soon. But he has a lot of good points. It's a very easy read. It's a little simpleton. It's not really complicated reading over here. But he's taken advantage of opportunities. That's how he's taken his very small little restaurant and he's turned it into some powerhouse. And he's a really smart guy for doing that. And at some point he had to buy back his company in order to maintain control. And so he's gone through ups and downs. And this isn't the only time he's going through an up or down. But he's got a pretty good point here. When things are bad, we often tend to forget that they're going to be good again. Just like when things were good, we forgot that they were going to be bad again. You need to prepare for both types of situations, because both are headed your way sooner or later. And it is. We've had goods and bad times. We've had 9/11 and hurricane and recessions and the Oklahoma bombing that we observed again this last week. There have been things that have impacted our emotions and our economic situation and our financial situations. But I've seen how resilient the American people are and how the Houston people are, and our economy is more resilient than ever before. So I think we want to get out and get back to some sort of normalcy, even though it's going to be different than it was before. But where you live is certainly more important than ever before. And finding the right home for you, whether that's a rental place or whether it's a place that you purchase, I think that's what people are going to focus on as much as their economic livelihood at the same time. So I'll answer some questions now, Aaron. I couldn't multitask and look at all the questions that pop up on the chat. Do you want to summarize some, or if people type in another one, I'll be able to see it now if there are a couple of questions.
Sure. We have a question that is, with the current issues going on with oil and the pandemic at the same time, do you see trends following what happened in 83 and 85?
The biggest thing about 83 and 85 is the mass exodus of people out of the city. You had failures of the banking industry and the financial loan industry. I mean, my parents back then were able to pick up a house for $10,000. I served on the school board in that particular time, and people just gave us, this was in Huntsville, they just gave us their land because they didn't want to pay taxes on it anymore. They were constantly just giving us the land, and we couldn't even sell a lot on a golf course for $2,000 in 1984 and 1985. Interest rates spiked to 16 and 18%. Means you had a number of different scenarios that I don't think you're going to have today. I don't think you're going to have a meltdown of the financial industry. I do believe the government's going to prop up many of these industries to keep them from failing, whether that's the airline industry or whether that's the food service industry or whether that's hospital industry. I mean, there's a great article and information yesterday about the number of hospitals that are reducing the salary of these amazing warriors that are, working on the front line every day, because they don't make money during pandemics. They make money on elective surgeries. They make money on kidney stones. They make money on breast implants and Botox, and you're not able to make that money. So the hospital revenue is off significantly at a time that hospitals are fuller than ever. But people don't even go to the emergency room today because they're scared of getting the virus if they have a scrape in their arm, so they don't go there. So that industry is impacted, and something's going to have to be done there. These cities are definitely impacted on the sales tax revenue, the cities and the counties, but I believe you're going to see some stabilization, as you've seen with the PPP and the economic disaster loans, enough that you're not going to see the same thing happen that happened in 1983, 84, 85. I don't believe you're going to see a mass exodus of people moving out of Houston and Harris County. You may see them moving out of New York City or Chicago or San Francisco. Maybe their jobs aren't there, but the cost of living, the general climate, the general green space, the quality of life that we've been curating over the last 20 years makes entities and areas like Houston, Nashville, Atlanta, some of those areas, Austin, more and more and more desirable than ever before, even if it's a chance to start over. I mean, a lot of my friends are entrepreneurs. I'm a small businessman. I will be perfectly honest with you. This is a great opportunity to invest in a small business. Before, the rental rates were skyrocketing, both in the Heights and everyone else. It's going to be easier to lease something today than it was for the last 5 years. If you want to be self-employed or open a small business, there's going to be while some will go out, and I don't want to be incentive, there's an opportunity for someone else to step in and have a better environment to negotiate a lease and hire people. And I think it's going to be a good opportunity for an expansion of certain things within our city. And so I don't in any way perceive that where we live is going to be less desirable. I think some people are going to have to change where they have worked and how they have worked, but I think they're going to want to work and live and play here in Houston. And I don't see the foreclosures. I just don't see it. And so I don't think you're going to see massive foreclosures. We were inching up, like I say, on some of these flipped areas that were tied to the hurricane. Some of those people were unrealistic, but so I just don't think the average house is going to go into foreclosure. I think most of us, because like I say, we weren't financing 107%. I know many people that before this started were going to go to work someplace else, Dallas or Chicago or Denver, and instead of selling their house, they're going to rent their house. They're going to rent their house. Maybe they take a $200 a month loss. I don't know. They're not all going to be able to rent them for exactly what they have on it, and they're going to wait and sell them at a later date. They're not just going to hand them back in. They're going supply and demand. Don't sell low if you don't have to. Find a way, and instead of buying a house in Dallas or Denver or wherever else you're going to go rent one. And maybe you're going to rent one a little cheaper than you would have rented before this whole situation started. So I don't really think you're going to see foreclosures, bank failures. I don't think banks want to take back any property, so I think you'll have more forbearance and forgiveness. You'll renegotiate some leases, some mortgages, and I think we'll all see that this too shall pass. It may take a year or two to get past all this. I don't think it's going to end anytime soon, so I think you're going to see certain creativity of how it can work, but I don't think you're going to see 1983 all over again.
Okie
And
dokie. We're also asking, are we thinking that if a property we remove from the market, should it be listed again or should it be taken off through May? And then what indicators would you look at that it's time to relist?
yeah, I would think a 30-day removal to give people to get out of wherever they are now, hunker down, quarantine, self-work, and back into something, something more forward, a little more routine of something. And I think that's going to take, 2, 3, 4 weeks of something like that. I don't think we're going to be over here with the Pride Parade with 250,000 people lined up in front of City Hall in June like we normally would have. But I do think you're going to see the opening of stores, people going back and hanging out at the Man Ready's or Harold in the Heights, or going for a drink, or going out to eat and wanting to linger. Even if we're 6 feet apart, I can't wait to go out and eat with some of you, and at least I'll just wave and talk and not be in a Zoom meeting and probably wear better pants than I am at the moment. But I think I'd give it a little chance to get a little more into something normal. Let people figure out not only their own situation, because most people who are in housing aren't overly concerned about their future. They're concerned about everyone else's future. So yeah, I think 30 days is a pretty good window. I do think the spring selling season is going to be the summer selling season.
I believe that's all the questions we have.
Excellent. Okay, we'll do this again next Tuesday. Stay safe. Don't lose faith. Believe me, the social distancing is working. We are nearing an end, but we got to hang in here another week to 10 days or so. It's really not that hard. We can do it. We can do this, Houston. We can do this, America. Thank you all very much.